Okay, so welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us for the fifth edition of the Fireside Chat. My name is Garrett McLaughlin. For those of you who are new to this series, the Fireside Chat is a conversational webinar where we connect with some of the top professionals in the running industry. This week, we have Nicole Sifuentes, who is a former Olympic runner and running coach in Plymouth, Michigan. But before we get started, let me cover a few quick housekeeping items. So first, do me a favor, silence any technology around you. There's a lot of good information in this chat. I want to make sure you get the most from it. Second, I highly recommend asking questions. Of course, we'll cover specific items as we're laid out in the registration, but you are welcome to ask questions at any time to help you get the most from your running. Feel free to drop a question in the, there should be a chat box somewhere on your screen right now. Feel free to drop a question now at any point throughout this chat, just to make sure you get your questions answered. And lastly, if you cannot stay for the entire chat for whatever reason, or you just want to reflect back on this content at a later time, I will be sending the replay tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern time. So make sure you check your email and especially the spam folder, since it can sometimes end up in there. So without further ado, Nicole, how's everything going this evening?
Good, thank you. Thanks
Not
for
by
having
the
me.
actual fireplace this time.
Oh my goodness, it's so cold and dark. No.
I know. So for those of you who didn't get a chance to see the previous Fireside Chat I did with Nicole, she had a great, I think it was like 6 or 7 o'clock at night. It was in the summer, had the awesome fireplace going outside. So a little different time of year now, but.
Yeah, I'm inside.
All right, so let's get started here. Again, we wanted to cover running form, what matters and what doesn't. But before we get into the content itself, could you give a little background about you, your experience as a runner and a coach?
Sure. So my name's Nicole Sifuentes. I am a two-time Canadian Olympian in the 1,500 meter run, but I am now retired. So I'm a retired athlete. I don't train hard like that anymore. I do run sometimes still. And I am now a personal running coach. I own my own running coaching business, Sifuentes Coaching and Consulting. I'm also a certified strength and conditioning specialist. I have had my fair share of form analysis over the course of my career. You can see here, I've got images from 2 separate occasions, and there's more than this. But I can say that I didn't need these form analysis to find out that I am a heel striker. I will always be a heel striker, and there's nothing wrong with that. So I'm sure we'll touch on that a little bit more later in the presentation.
Yeah, definitely. I know you hear from a lot, especially a lot of the good form running clinics and different things you see out there. Heel striking is something we need to change. But from your standpoint, have you ever been told that you needed to fix that, or what was the thought process going through the different people that you've worked with over the years at a high level?
No one has ever told me there was anything wrong with heel striking.
Awesome.
That I've worked with, but I see it all the time online. I hear it all the time in little running chats and articles. So unfortunately, there's a lot of misinformation out there, but that's why I am excited to have this webinar today.
Awesome.
Fix some of those, clarify some of those pieces of information.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. So why would you say we want good form?
Well, I was thinking, as a runner, why is there so much interest in running form? What are we actually trying to do when we're working on our form? And I would say probably the number one reason is to avoid injuries, or maybe tied with improving running performance. And then I would say kind of in the current climate of now, our society, it seems to be there's this third reason, which is to look good in our social media photos. And I will have to say that today we are going to focus on the top 2 reasons. And if you want to look good in your social media photos, that just requires lots of different posing and lots of takes. Okay, so you can do whatever you want in a still photo. They hide a lot. They are not telling the truth. A still photo doesn't tell the whole story. So we'll be focusing on the top 2 reasons today, which is avoiding injuries and improving running performance, and actually how to get those, and is working on our form the best and most efficient way to achieve those goals.
Okay. And so to you, what is, if you had to classify ideal running form, what does that mean to you?
Okay, so I love this slide here. I saw it actually on Instagram after we had planned this webinar, but here, you can't see very clearly, but those words say knee angle 120 degrees, form ideal. And that's why I want to talk about this, because there really is no ideal form. This ad is pretty misleading. Good form is any form that doesn't hold us back from what we want to do as a runner. So it's important to kind of think through, what are your goals as a runner? What do you really want to achieve? Do you want to set new personal bests? Do you want to really challenge yourself and find out what you're capable of? Or do you want to be able to just run with your friends on the weekends? Do you want to just be able to get out the door consistently on your own, stay healthy, keep moving? You know, there's a lot of different goals, a lot of different ranges in people's interests in even training hard or training lightly. And that's okay, but it's really important to decide on what your goal is. And then if your running form isn't holding you back from that, then you have good form. I think that that's probably, so in short, there really is no ideal knee angle. Furthermore, the knee angle will depend on the symmetry of someone's body and their mobility levels, and also how fast they're running, and whether they're running up on a hill or down a hill. So there's no need to worry ever about your knee angle.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've seen, a lot of different thought processes, recommendations out there saying this is the way to do it. But then if you think about that a little bit more deeply, we realize, man, we're so different as individuals, different running styles, different leg lengths, biomechanics, injury history. Like, what is ideal if we take those things into consideration, which it almost throws that all out the window. There
is no specific ideal that we can really describe beyond just, can you run? Do you enjoy running? Can you keep going? Then you're good.
So I think one thing, and with this next slide, really proves that when we look at some of the top runners here, and maybe you want to kind of talk us through this a little bit. It's very interesting to see some of the differences in running form between the best of the best here.
Yeah, I just put this collage quickly together, and I can tell you it was not hard for me to find examples. I did not need to find kind of like, B-list runners to get ones with what quote unquote poor form. You can see here I've got Olympic champions, Boston Marathon champions, and world record holders. And if you take a quick glance through, you're going to see some overstride. You're going to see a lot of heel striking. You're going to see some knock knees, knee valgus, horrendous upper body form. And all of these people, these runners, guess what they're not doing on their free time? Working on their form. They're working on their fitness. They're working out. They're getting faster. Their form is not holding them back. Of course, yes, all of them I'm sure have had injuries, because pretty much every runner who pushes their limits will have injuries, but that hasn't really, that happens regardless of form. So I just thought this was a good example. Just keep these photos in mind if you're ever worried about any of these issues. If it's not hurting you, you're probably going to be okay. But we'll talk about progressing running a little bit more later.
So if maybe running form is not the top priority, what are some of the key things that you feel matter when it comes to running performance, injury reduction, or what have you?
So I put these two things. The first one is the stability of the pelvis, and you'll see that photo on the left. That's me, extremely tired, having a terrible race. No one's around me because I think I've probably shot out the back. But what I have there is, even in a very fatigued state, the hips are level. So the stability of the hips is what's important, because stability is what lets us transfer force, like the strength we have in our body, into the ground. And we need that to run. So if you want to think of an example, why we need that stability is, imagine if you have a very heavy suitcase and you're trying to lift it out of the trunk of your car and take it on the ground, but you're standing on a sheet of ice. It's just not going to be possible. You won't be able to stabilize yourself. You won't be able to put the adequate force into the ground, even if you're capable of picking up that suitcase. But you could probably do it if it was a box of Kleenex, right? Because it's a lot lighter. So if you're standing on solid ground, you're going to have no trouble picking up that suitcase, even if it's heavy, just momentarily. And that's why we need stability. So these level hips here, what we need is that stability so that the hips aren't dropping down, drooping, shifting side to side when we take a step. Now, I say this is in the what matters bucket because probably anyone who struggles in this area will eventually have problems. Whereas if you have kind of some of the other, maybe you have a little overstride or little knock knees, not everyone who has those problems is going to struggle because of them. But this is something that probably, if you have issues here and you try to progress your running, I don't really know of many exceptions here. So this is a big one. And then the next one here is range of motion, particularly in extension of the hips. That means you can see the distance between the front knee and the back leg of this runner. Now, I do want to qualify that these two runners are sprinting. They're running as hard as they can at the time. And I think even though it looks flat, slightly uphill, okay? So we don't need this range of motion to jog. It's not necessary, but we do need range of motion that isn't limited to like a comfortable running speed, because it's going to hold us back from trying to go faster. So we do need range of motion enough to access the speed that we have in our body. So if you're fit and you could run faster, but like you can't get your legs opening up here, then you're going to have trouble using the fitness you have in your body. So this will hold you back. If you're tight through the hips, if you can't extend and you want to run faster, you're going to run into trouble. And so these are the two things that I kind of consider as really, really basic importance for all levels of running.
Mm-hmm. And I don't want to get ahead too much, so feel free to stop me. But so with the runners you're working with, are there specific things that you're adding in their program to supplement their running that address these things? Or do you wait until you see it to address it? Or is it like you see most people struggle here?
I would say that these things are among everything in form, actually to a certain extent can be trained through running. So for example, this working in range of motion, like I do recommend several hip mobility exercises and some other dynamic mobility exercises for everyone I work with, pretty much right off the bat. Stability in the pelvis, and that's coming from strength through the core and through the glutes. And that is also kind of incorporated into some of the very basic mobility exercises that I have with everyone. But the thing that I also want to emphasize is like running form will improve to an extent simply by running. We get better at something by doing something. Our body learns to become more efficient. And so if I see a runner who the first time they're running, they're like a total mess. They have baby steps, no mobility through the hips, and just very unstable, I'm not going to send them to go work on their form. I'm just going to very gradually help them just run a little bit more and a little bit more. And if we progress too quickly, yes, they will become injured, but not because they have poor form, because they progress too quickly. Because we will get stronger by doing something. Now, of course, sometimes, due to some very extreme, tightness, rotation of the hips, misalignment, it's going to be difficult to work through these just naturally. And that's where kind of we'll go to some next steps, and we'll talk about that a little bit down the road. But yes, I think it's important to just get started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting you say that too, because I've had some people approach me and working with them for the first time and doing an evaluation, watching them squat and having them say, hey, I was told that I can't squat because of this. And you ask them, hey, how often do you squat? Oh, I've only done it a couple times. Like, okay, well, let's do the movement first before we start breaking it down. Like, we need to fix so many things,
right,
and just teach good squat form, good mechanics, because it's just teaching that pattern first. So in terms of, and on the other end of the spectrum, what are some things you hear about that you think maybe don't matter as much as people tend to believe?
Okay, so we talked about these a little bit already when we were looking at the collage of very accomplished runners. But I would say something that doesn't matter is anything that's not limiting you, okay? So if it's not causing a problem, then just go ahead and keep running in a smart way. But that would be foot strike, overstride. I mean, unless it's extremely excessive, I would say you're not having problems, let's let's try to keep going. And if it does cause problems, then we address it. But like the number of very accomplished runners I've seen, and I'm like, wow, I just didn't think that that would work out. And it does. It really does. Like, it's not for everyone, and there are exceptions, but it's just important. Like, this is not a blanket. No one can overstride, because lots of people can do it really well, shockingly.
Right.
180 steps per minute, that is a big one. That, I mean, it's just very important to realize that people are individuals. So we're going to have a quicker turnover if we have a turnover, and by turnover I mean cadence, steps per minute, if our legs are very short in proportion to our body height. If we're all legs, it's going to be different. If we run faster, our cadence speeds up. If we run slower or start jogging, our cadence will lower. So there's a lot of misinformation around that one. I would say knee angles, torso angles, elbow angles, any type of angles. Don't worry about it. You're fine. Just enjoy running.
Right. And so Jen was curious of how does cadence change per person? I'm sure you see, I mean, your runners, you probably see along the entire spectrum, from people running 150 steps per minute to people running 200 plus. Is there anything that you would say, and I know you said 180 steps per minute, there's no one general recommendation, but is there anything that you say would be better or worse, or anything to even worry about with that?
I would say we're definitely looking for cadence to change based on our running speed. So it's perfectly natural to have, if I'm working with a runner and they're running 12, 13 minute per miles pace, it makes complete sense for them to have a low cadence. And then their walking pace may be 15 minutes per mile, 16 minutes per mile. It's not going to be too much different. And very few people walk at 180 steps per minute. That's very fast for walking. But when we're running fast, we should see a higher cadence. So I would say one thing that we're looking for is like 180 steps per minute is kind of a very decent ballpark range for a relatively quick pace. Okay. So if I have someone who is doing 2-minute intervals at 7-minute or 7:30-minute per mile pace, and I notice that their cadence is 150, even without seeing them, I can be pretty sure that they're reaching a little bit. So I would ask them, let's try to focus on your cadence. I can't see you, but like try to land underneath your body rather than reaching your legs way out in front of you. That would be kind of my baseline recommendation. But the main thing is cadence really, really does depend quite a lot on pace that someone's running.
Right. That's awesome. And so in terms of kind of how you prioritize, I guess maybe you're running in the past as you kind of grew up through college, Olympic level, and then as you coach your clients right now, what is the hierarchy in terms of priorities that you recommend?
Yeah, so I touched on this a little bit earlier, but we want to just focus back on why are we working? What are the goals that we're actually trying to achieve? What's important to you? So I put those up there: get faster and prevent injuries, right? Because the looking good one is not what we're focused on today. So if those are your priorities, you just want to improve as a runner, the best way to do that is by running. But unfortunately, a lot of people get derailed at this first step because of mistakes from running smart. So, we want to prevent injuries. We want to get faster. We got to train, but not just run as much as we can or run however. There has to be kind of a reasoning behind it, a progression that allows for recovery. Very often we go too fast and encounter some problems immediately. So derailed in the lowest level, injured, wondering what's wrong, especially like my form must be off because I'm injured or I'm having pain. But really getting started in running will cause muscle soreness. It's just high impact, very repetitive. It's hard on the body. Soreness is absolutely natural for a beginner. So I think that the first step is really just to have a good progression that's gradual, allowing your body to come around, allowing your body to get used to the pounding, get used to the loading. And as with a good solid foundation there, you can then make the step to the next priority.
Right. And I think interesting too, some of those things you said, because I remember back this summer, I had a young woman reach out to me who I instantly referred to you. She said, "Hey, I want to train for a marathon. I'm doing running 2 to 3 days per week, and I want to train for a race and whatever. Can you help me with strength training and running analysis, those things?" And I instantly thought, I'm not sure if this person's even running enough to make what we're doing here, strength training, running analysis, worth it. So do you see people on both ends of the spectrum in terms of running, like here, not running enough, running too much, that you need to kind of pull them in to get them on a structured and smart program?
Absolutely. I mean, if you're not running enough, there's no amount of form work or strength training you can do to get fitter. You need to run more. But if you are running too much, there's no amount of strength training or form work that you can possibly do that's going to protect you from injury or burnout. So either way, this is the foundation. Having a program that's smart, it's progressing you intelligently and protecting you from problems that you don't need to have.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say to those people that maybe coming from their doctor say, "Hey, I was told I need to do strength training before I run because running is bad for my knees, or running will cause me to get injured"? Have you ever seen someone get into running with no strength training, no foundation, still do well with no risk of injury or no big issues?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I just think of like every single college kid I've worked with, they started running and they just ran. They started doing a little bit in junior high and then did a little more in high school and then got good enough to come to college, and they've never lifted a weight in their life. I mean, definitely, because running itself will help you become better at running, especially if you are allowed to progress gradually enough to adapt to it.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And so what this next level of the hierarchy here, why does this matter? Mobility, activation, self therapy, who needs to do those things?
I would say almost everyone. There are some runners who will run very little, who can probably get away without doing this because there's just so much time between runs, and they're not challenging themselves very much. So I think that most people who have goals will have to at least do this second step. And I consider this maintenance, body maintenance. You're taking care of yourself. And the reason why is because nothing can prevent a runner from injury if you're not on the defense. We always need to be on the defense from injury. We always need to respect any little pain we have, and that doesn't mean immediately stopping running if we're a tiny bit sore, but it means paying attention. And it also means learning the difference between what being sore feels like and what is, this doesn't feel right and I should stop running and I should address it. And so this takes time and it takes learning. It actually takes paying attention to how you feel. But this is very important, I think, for pretty much every single runner. Yes, there are some exceptions. There are some people who can stay at phase one, run smart, just run smart, and they will get away with it. But as soon as we start trying to challenge ourselves and improve ourselves as runners, dialing up the intensity and doing some harder workouts or longer runs, maintenance comes into play.
Okay. And so tell me for a quick second, I know I read an awesome article from you the other day about pain and about a certain threshold. So some people that feel something almost like it's a low level pain and they immediately stop training, other people that consistently run at higher levels of pain and don't respect that. Where do you feel like that cutoff is that we need to say, okay, now is the time where we need to rethink some things or we need to go and get some help?
Yeah, so my cutoff is past 2 out of 10 on the pain scale. So if you're at a 1 or 2 and there's a little something hurting, and I'm not talking about soreness here because sometimes we have extreme soreness and that's okay, but something's a little painful and you're running along, but it's kind of getting better as you go. No worries, that's okay. But still, make a mental note. Or you're running along, it's 1, it's a 2 maybe, but there's no change. It's not getting worse at all. Okay, go ahead, finish your workout. Okay, so you're running 2, it's getting to be a 3, it's getting worse. Immediately just stop. Just stop running. And not after the workout and not when the run's over, but just now. And the reason I say that, and 2 seems, maybe very conservative. a lot of people can run through that, and many do a lot. But a 2 can become a 0 in one day with some maintenance at home. So little self-therapy, rolling, stretching, icing, heat, you know, we need to develop some tools in our arsenal to take care of ourselves. And then the next day you may be fine, or it may take just one day of rest with some therapy, some attention. Respect the pain, give it some attention. And then we might be back on track in one to 2 days. But a 2 can become a 5 and can become a 7 and can take us out for weeks or months very quickly. All it takes is like a couple runs of pushing through it. And then there's a lot of regret involved. So that's why I'm pretty conservative. Worst thing that happens is that you miss the rest of your run and the next day you're back to normal. So that's okay.
Right. Yeah. And it could be a lot worse. What are some of the things in terms of self-therapy that you recommend? Do you program this for a lot of your runners, or do you say, here, find out what works for you and do that to the point where you're kind of just taking care of your body?
Yeah, it's very individual. I do offer, obviously, examples. I think every runner should have a foam roller and use it. So it doesn't work if you don't use it. And then, of course, there's a bunch of gadgets available and in running stores. And I actually don't think that these are just gimmicks. They can work very well for you, but not everyone needs every tool. So if you have a problem, you can ask maybe a runner who knows more than you. You can potentially ask a massage therapist if you can go see a sports massage therapist, a physical therapist, or you can go to a running store and say, hey, I always have the bottom of my arch is a little iffy. I have a tight arches. Can you give me something to roll my feet, and buy something and try it? And if it works for you, then keep it. And if it doesn't, okay, well, you are making an investment in learning how to take care of your body. I think it's helpful to learn in conjunction with a therapist who knows more than you. So physical therapist, athletic therapist, massage therapist who has better knowledge of the body than you do. I think that's helpful, but it's not necessary. It's a lot of trial and error and learning over the course of your running career.
Awesome. And what are the key things that you found worked for you as you were running at a high level? What were the standards? I need to do this every single day to make sure I'm performing at a top level.
We don't have time to cover all of them.
Too many?
A lot. I have all the tools and tricks that you can imagine, but for me, huge was doing the mobility exercises. So dynamic mobility before I ran, making sure that my hips were moving. I always notoriously had the right hip would tighten up more. I was constantly turning left, so rotating my body left on a track at high intensity causes that, right? So that's something that I always had to be on top of. Otherwise, it would become a problem. Too much, but there's a lot of maintenance involved when you're pushing your body hard every single day for years.
Yeah, I can imagine. We'll make that the next chat, maybe to dig into that a little bit more. And so in terms of strength training, is this necessary? And if so, which runners should be thinking about kind of working on or completing a consistent strength training routine?
So strength training may or may not be necessary. I think it really depends on a runner's goals primarily. So we talked about some of the runners who just want to get out there. They have no interest in doing strength training. They just want to run. They're not injured. That's fine. Don't do it. It does become more important for sure for people who really want to find out what they're capable of, discover their potential, get personal bests, because strength training actually really does help improve running performance. It helps us actually put more force into the ground with every step. Not to mention kind of making us a little bit more resilient to injury by, evening out some asymmetries in strength. So from right side to left side, working like we talked about earlier, you can really pinpoint like stability through the hips. And also like range of motion can be worked really well with the use of weights. So strength training, not everyone needs to do it. But depending on your goals, and when your goals really start reaching up and you have really already developed that foundation of running smart, you're training smart, you're doing great training, and you're still looking for more ways to get better, then, and you're healthy even, you have no issues, but you're looking to still improve, strength training is definitely a very important piece of the puzzle. And then of course, if you're struggling with some, injuries and you're not sure why, and you already have a great training program, you're running smart. I've worked with people and we're being so conservative, progressing so slowly, and there's still issues, still struggles. At that point, like, it's really important to get some advice, get someone to see you in person and let you know what weaknesses you have and get evaluated, and then start working on those.
Mhm. And so those people maybe that have an injury history or have bigger goals that they want to achieve, what is required in terms of strength training per week? Is this, I know you see a lot of different sports doing different things. Is it a single day, 2 days, 3 days? How does it fit around the running plan?
I think it should be relatively individualized based on someone's availability. So if someone can train exactly how I want them to, and their schedule allows for that, which is rare because, it takes a lot of time, then I would put strength training maybe 2 times a week with a long workout to cover a lot. Um, and I would do it after a harder workout or a longer run to keep the easy recovery days light. So don't then put a strength workout on an easy day. However, with scheduling, it needs to be adjusted. Some people don't have time for that. So we would maybe put a few exercises every single day, or like 4 or 5 times a week, to make sure that we're getting the work in, but also working with someone's schedule, because ultimately training doesn't work if you don't do it. And so it's much more important to actually get it done rather than finding one perfect way. Like, there is no ideal form. There also is no ideal program, really. It just needs to work for the person.
Awesome. That's great. And so in this last piece here, running form, which is the top tip of the pyramid here, we've at this point, we've kind of already summarized where you stand and where running form fits in your hierarchy, but could you dive into that a little bit more here, just to kind of wrap up this hierarchy?
Sure. So I think the main thing to understand here is to successfully make a form change. So change something in the way you run, and you no longer think about it. You just do it, even when you're tired. That's an extremely long-term goal. I'm talking months, but generally years here. With focused training and practice. And that practice is generally done not while you're running. So it's done with additional things through strength training and form drills, and mobility. So sometimes your body can't even move that way. You need to get the proper range of motion to move that way. Then you teach yourself. But if we were working on a form to improve performance, when we're trying to perform, we're thinking about running hard. Like, everything falls away. So we're going to revert back to our old patterns. This takes incredibly long time to make a real lasting change. And it requires like totally rock solid first 3 steps here. So a good training program that's smart, you're taking care of your body, you've got the good habits set down, and you have a strength training program. And through that strength training program, that is how to make the most changes in your form. It's not going to be while you're running. So the reason why this is prioritized at the very tippity top here, because obviously we require a strong foundation of the first 3 tiers, but also because as soon as you start putting effort into changing your form, you are taking energy and time away from training to get faster. Okay. Changes to your form and the work that's required is tiring. Takes energy, and it takes a lot of time, and that is time and energy that you won't be spending doing your workouts or recovering from your workouts. So there's a cost benefit there, cost versus a benefit, which makes this kind of a tricky place to go, and it really depends on the individual.
Definitely. And I think if you think back to some of those images before, especially those 2 guys that were running at faster speeds, really extending and pushing off from the hips, someone that goes out and sees that picture on Instagram or looks it up online, think I need to run like that, but they don't look at some of these underlying things. Like, do I actually have the mobility? Do I have the strength? So you might actually be kind of barking up a tree that
do I ever run sub 5-minute mile pace ever? Okay. It's just, these are things that it's very hard to know exactly through one image. And hopefully, there should be an understanding that these images aren't there and telling the whole story. And really, there's a lot that, you know, our bodies are probably doing more for us than they're doing against us when it comes to form. And
Right.
we can embrace what we got.
Awesome. So let's start to wrap up here. So if anyone has any questions, I know Jen had a question that I asked the question back to, so feel free to respond to that in a second if you can. If you have questions, let's add those into the, is there anything you want to throw out there on that picture you put, that last picture on the left side? And I just added your contact information here just to make sure people could reference that if they needed to.
Oh yeah, no problem. So thanks for adding that too. I put this photo in on the left because I actually this is a professional runner that I personally know. We were on the Olympic team together, and she shared this, and also her physiotherapist shared this on Instagram. So I thought I'd throw it up there. But this just shows something that she is dealing with, instability in the pelvis. You can see that she has her left hip dropping quite a bit on the stance phase where she's landing. And she has made some effort from August to November to improve this quite a bit. So this is a professional athlete whose number one job is to run. And she has put so much effort in, and it took her a few months to make this progress. Okay. So if we're not professional runners and we want to make progress here like this, it's going to take some time. But it's worth it. And on the left, she's dealing with a bunch of injuries and as a result of this instability of the pelvis. And she's trying to make the next Olympic team. So we can't be dealing with those injuries. This is a problem for her that needs to be corrected. This is a piece of form that really does matter. However, if she just wanted to jog the rest of her life, she would probably be fine. And that's okay. So it really comes back to goals. And what are you trying to achieve? And like, where does it really matter to just buckle down and like make a big form change?
Awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. And you wonder too, this person, their number one job is to train and to get better and to get faster. They're not sitting at a desk throughout the day doing other things. I mean, their prime focus is to fix these things, and it still takes time.
Yeah.
So before we get into the Q&A, because I have some questions waiting here, what are some ways, if someone has a question for you, obviously contact information is here, what type of program, services, anything upcoming in terms of, I know you ran a group program I've seen over the last couple of months, but anything people should consider or look into?
Oh yeah, I have upcoming. So starting the new year. So it's not like right around the corner, but starting July the 4th or January the 4th, that's a Monday, I'll be starting my next virtual training group. And in that training group, we cover a lot of foundational things. So if some of this stuff about form and prioritizing, training smart, mobility exercises, if things like that are new to you, we cover a lot of foundational stuff in that program, new workouts every week to keep things interesting. It's a really great program to kind of just learn a lot about how to train effectively. And it's in a small group. So we have a Zoom chat like this once per week if you can make it. We keep each other accountable through the workouts and stuff, but it's a lot of information and a lot of learning by doing in that program. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Awesome. And if someone has a bigger goals for the springtime, running their first half, their first fall, or maybe they're a seasoned runner trying to do better, would you say they're a good fit for that program, or more one-on-one coaching is better for them?
I would say that in the program, most runners will learn something. It's very valuable information that anyone could apply to their training. So I would say that it would require a little bit of finesse to fit it into like a training plan that someone is already doing. But for this program I've added in individual one-on-one consultations with everyone who signs up. So before the program starts, we could talk that over, and we could talk about how to kind of blend it into your program. But the workouts need to be like, we got to do the workouts because there are a lot of learning by doing and executing. So working that into a training plan. And also I do one-on-one coaching that's 100% individualized. So every workout is designed for you. The schedule is designed for you based on your exact needs and the exact goal that you want to get to. I would say that the virtual training group is a little bit, you're not going to get a ton of volume in it. So if you're training for a marathon, it might not, and your marathon's coming right up, it's not marathon specific marathon prep by any means.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. So let's get into a couple questions here and start wrapping up over the next 5 minutes or so, since you have a few waiting here right now. Luke asked, what are the top priorities for a runner that's going into college? And would that change at all from the things you presented here today?
For college runners, this is not going to be a popular answer, but it's sleep. Holy cow.
Awesome.
No college runners get enough sleep. And if you can sleep enough, and I mean like probably a minimum of 8 hours, but maybe more, you will do so much for yourself to prevent injury. I cannot overstress it. That would be my top priority other than what we've already mentioned.
That's awesome. Didn't know if you were going with that one, and that's a great recommendation. I think a lot of people need to focus on as well, since it's a very neglected component. Deborah asks, so proper running form since she's recovering from a meniscus repair surgery. So in that injury category, injured, coming back from surgery, is there anything she should consider in terms of running form?
I would say this is outside of my scope of knowledge.
Okay.
Garrett, maybe you can answer that question.
Right. Yeah, I definitely could. I mean, I would say in that situation, you probably should be working with someone more specifically, one-on-one, but definitely looking at where the foot is landing in relation to the body center of mass, not overstriding, making sure cadence is in check to not load that leg and that knee specifically. There's a lot of little things you want to look at that could really, really help that. But let's get back on yours here. So how do you keep form in check while running? For those people that feel like form falls apart, maybe later in their run or the faster they run, is it just, hey, we need to train to hold it together and improve our fitness and how our body is functioning at those speeds? Or do we actually need to think about something from a form standpoint?
I would say it's the former of what you said. Everyone's form is going to break down to a certain extent when they are pushing themselves hard. And it's very difficult to focus on form when we are running hard. So if I would say those change, like the form breaking down, if you want to prevent that, it's going to come through becoming a stronger runner. And you don't necessarily need to do strength training for that. It will help. But running more, getting fitter, running more, getting stronger. Volume makes you stronger if you do it in a smart way, will help with that, because the fitter you get, the later in your workout or your run, you're getting fatigued. And that means that you're breaking down later, right? So yeah, it's you just keep working. And I would say if you find your form constantly breaking down, then probably you're challenging yourself too often, because there should be mostly easy running. With the occasional harder efforts in a week. So there should be very many runs and lots of miles or kilometers that you're running where you don't have to worry about your form breaking down, because you're not pushing yourself hard enough to make that happen.
Okay. So as a follow-up to that, I was going to ask, how often do you push into that? If your form is breaking down, hey, I'm just making this up, 60 minutes for the last 20, I notice I'm breaking down. Is that, hey, after 40 minutes, I'm done, my run's over? Or should I push into that to some degree because that's what's needed to get to the next level, to get stronger?
I would say it depends on the purpose of the run. So if the run is meant to be a hard hour, we're ending kind of at a tempo effort or threshold effort, then yeah, you just push through it. You make it happen. You just hold your heart rate high, you work. And maybe it's not pretty, but that's the purpose of the day. But at the same time, if you have an easy 1 hour run and your form's breaking down at the end of it, then that's no longer an easy 1 hour run. And the run could either be shortened, or the run could be broken up into segments, so 60 minutes, but every 5th minute you walk, right? To keep it easy, to keep your form in check without making it too hard. There's a lot of different ways around it, but everyone should be able to find an easy pace that their form won't break down on. They're realizing that, they can comfortably go. And if that easy pace is very slow and you can only maintain it for 3 minutes then you need a 1 minute walk, then that's totally fine. You start there, then you build from there.
Awesome. 2 questions here from Jen. First one on the self-therapy standpoint. So she saw that like scraping tools. I know they have tools that you can use for cell therapy, self-myofascial release. Have you used those in the past, or do you recommend those?
Yes, I love those.
Awesome.
But you don't need to spend $150 on them. There's like a lot of cheaper versions out there now. And honestly, I've used a spoon.
Good to know. We'll cover that in the next chat too, with all the things you've done. And then next question, what is the max number of days or workouts per week to run hard? I know it probably has to be individualized to some degree, but
Yes.
is there a general recommendation to that you would throw out there?
The first thing I'm going to ask is how old you are, okay? Because young whippersnappers in college can afford to get away with some hard efforts, 3-4 times per week. Highly trained runners can sometimes do that too, especially, you go to the World Championships, your event has 3 rounds. So you're running your hard race 3 days in 1 week. But in general, I would say probably I would say two usually, maybe 2 workouts and 1 longer run, which the longer run is maybe moderate effort, or else 1 harder workout with the long run being the second hard effort of the week. And then for some older runners, if we have runners, in their 60s, 70s, there's no reason to be hitting really hard workouts very rarely. And the effort level and the intensity is really going to change based on age. And, also some people just are more fragile than others. We need to be more careful. So it's highly individualized, but I would say probably at the most 3 max for someone young, very young. I mean, like 20.
Okay. So she says she's 34 and is curious, is that the recommendations for part of the year or the entire year? So I guess going into the periodization of running, there's certain times of year that she should be running a little bit more aggressively than others.
Oh, well, this also depends on goals. But I would say that it could definitely be less than 2 or 3 hard efforts in a week, for sure. You could go down to 1 per week. And in some phases of training, you could do none. You could max out at moderate. And then I would maintain doing some strides, some snappy strides to hit a fast pace, but without actually, hard effort. So if you keep them real short, you can go pretty fast without feeling like it's hard. I would keep that up throughout the year.
Awesome. Okay. So that's the last question we have here. So if anyone has any other questions, anything we didn't get to today, there's Nicole's contact information. I'm going to be sending the replay of this chat tomorrow at 11 a.m. So make sure you're checking your email for that. Look in the spam folder, but definitely reach out to her directly. Questions, coaching needs, advice, whatever you have. Nicole, I just want to say once again, I appreciate you taking the time to join us on this fireside chat, and thanks for sharing your knowledge with us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. Thanks for joining us.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Hope you guys have a good night.